welcome back to another episode of Girl That'll Preach. This is the series where I invite my friends to share about what God is doing in and through their lives. It's like sitting in on a conversation where friends share their passions, usually ending with, Girl That'll Preach. And today I'm very excited to have with us Brittany Ketter, and we're going to have a discussion about representing Jesus well on social media. Now that's a hot topic. For those of you who don't know Brittany, she is the social media specialist for Pendel Women. She's also a writer, she's a speaker, and a passionate follower of Jesus. She graduated from Victory School of Ministry, and she serves now in various ways in ministry and in business. She will tell you it is her desire to encourage, empower, and embolden a generation of women who are wholeheartedly devoted to God. So thank you so much for being here, Brittany. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I was really excited about this invitation.
Well, Brittany and I, we were talking about this before. We first met when I was doing ministry to single women, and we published a few of the blogs that you had written at the time. And later on, I met you when you were volunteering at Pendel Women events. I think we met maybe at the State College event, or that's like the memory that I seem to have. But that year was kind of a blur, so maybe it was a different event. But even though we met in person, I actually started to get to know you through social media. That's when it went from, oh, that's Brittany, to, wow, I like Brittany. She's funny, she likes to stay up at late at night. She's passionate about following Jesus. That's how you kind of so much interaction goes on in social media. And that's kind of how I really got to know you and kind of admire how you do life. So because of her expertise with Pendel Women's social media, which you are doing an amazing job, it's always scheduled, it's always beautiful. And because I admire your ministry and how you do social media well, I wanted you to come on and just kind of talk about it for a while. So I think the basis is we all know that social media has pitfalls. I mean, sometimes we go on social media, I know I do, and I wonder, what was that person even, thinking? Why would they possibly share that? And Jamie and I were talking about it a little while ago, and he was saying he thinks that people should make their password, I'm a Christian, so that they have to type that on before they go on social media to remind themselves, hey, you're still a Christian, even online, and you need to act like it, and you need to talk like it and speak like it. And it was about that time that we were having that discussion that I saw that you were actually had a lot of thoughts and had a lot of passion about doing social media well. So I'm excited to hear your voice on that today. So most people know about the pitfalls. I mean, we've all been there and looked at it and been like, oh my goodness, that person is just killing their reputation right now. But what do you see as some of the benefits of social media?
I think you touched on some of them already, and like even just getting to know you, it did go from like, okay, I know you like to see you at a conference, or like I knew who you were, but it was still more a matter of it was through the social media, like, oh, okay, I see this is the ministry avenues, these are things that you're passionate about, and just being able to see that online. I think there's a lot of connections that you can make through social media that you might not have really made in person. So well, maybe we didn't really sit down to like coffee. Sometimes I feel like I do know you that way, like that we do have, those kind of conversations, and because you get to see that over a period of time and just watch how sometimes people are growing through different topics, or, they're like working through them. And so I think that is one of the benefits, is making connections and getting to know people better. It's an opportunity to stay connected with people that maybe aren't necessarily like in your region, and somebody that you can just, call up and be at the coffee house, or just like building communities that aren't tied geographically.
Yeah. I know some of my closest friends live 2 hours away from me, but I know more about them than I do about the people who live next door, because we talk on social media. So that is really cool. How do you see social media as an avenue for new ministry opportunities? Because that's kind of your business with Pendel Women. That's what you do.
Yeah, that was a big part, especially during like when COVID hit. Like we definitely had to shift, and some of that was already kind of in the plans. It just kind of put a full speed ahead on everything. And Liz did just such an amazing job with like anticipating the need and being able to um, turn these kind of things around. And so we were able to launch a number of online based ministries. And so we had like the devotionals that we did twice weekly with the Monday moments and then the Wednesdays in the Word. Out of that, we also got the Sisterhood Matters, where we would get, important topics and be able to get people from around the district to come together on a panel and, let's have this discussion. Let's connect all these people. And a lot of us, when we did those panels, we didn't know each other before starting that, but there were friendships that were also built from having those panels together. And so that was just a really cool aspect of that ministry as well, because you're connecting people from all across the district and even outside of it in some cases. And then Up Close, that was another one that we had that's more of an interview style kind of thing. But we were able to launch out these online based ministries with the purpose of creating communities. And I've seen like the effects of being able to do that and some of the relationships that have come out of it. But yeah, it just really, it helped to do that. And also ministry, the ministry outlet, and being able to stream our services as far as, the spring tours, the fall conference, and then creating Facebook groups so that people sharing in that online experience had a place to go to connect with each other because they were sharing that same one, even if they weren't necessarily in the same location. So it just opened up a lot of doors to be able to reach beyond the lines of our district.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. I mean, I know because of what we do, that's a lot of work putting all those pieces together. So when COVID came, were you kind of like overwhelmed, like, wow, or were you ready?
Everything's kind of pretty well scheduled, and Liz still does a lot. And I do have like a media team that I still get to work with. And so Sammy does a lot of really great graphics. And I come behind and I would be on pretty much all of the events as far as making sure everything was running properly and the technology was working, or if it wasn't, fixing that. That got to be interesting sometimes when you're working with people remotely and trying to fix it when you're not actually there.
Mm-hmm.
So that got to be part of it. But it does add some things to it, but there's just, such, I know, I just love being able to do that and be able to help in that way. And it got a little crazy sometimes, but I have a really great team to work with there.
That's awesome. And it became, like you said, so important. Something that, like, when I went to college, well, there was no social media, there was no internet. But it was something we never even imagined. And now it's like this whole branch of ministry, focused on connections all over the world. And it's really exciting to see how God always manages to keep his kingdom going, no matter what. So that was kind of cool to watch things growing and developing. So, like I said before, as a Christian, sometimes I feel like we forget to represent Jesus online. What are some tips that you have that you would give for representing both as a ministry and as a person?
I think in both cases, it's like represent online like you would in person.
Mm-hmm.
So, at least you should like think about it before you post about it. Social media is not open access to every thought that runs through your head. And it's not open access for everything to be published. If you think it does not need to go on your Facebook every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just not open headlines for the world to see. And if you see it that way, a lot of times that's what you're going to find is a social media dump of here's what I'm thinking. And then you go back and you read it and you're like, oh, why did I post that? And like think before you post, I guess, is like one of the bigger ones. And just be conscious of your witness, and like what you're putting out there is still a reflection of you. And it's a reflection on how you see God and who God is in your life. And I think so many people can, throw things out there and it's like, this is where I'm at right now. And this is really, really awful. Here's my awful view of it. It's like, redeem that thought before you post it
Yes.
or something along those lines. But yeah, I guess just being conscious of how we present ourselves and how we respond to others. I mean, while it gives us a platform, I think it also gives us, where we don't necessarily always have this in person, the ability to really think about how we're going to respond or what we're going to say before we put it out there. Like, you have the time to craft your speech, to craft your words, to really think, is this going to be edifying to put out there? And you can do that.
That's a
So,
really good point. It's an opportunity. Whereas in public, you got to have an answer now. That's a really good point. I know one thing along these lines that Jamie and I kind of implemented early in our life. You talk about it gives you a platform, but it's a platform that you can use to lift Jesus up. It's a platform you can use to, show people that you love Jesus, but it can also tear the church down. You can ruin your own reputation in a matter of, a couple of posts and you're done. So one thing Jamie and I kind of do is if there's ever one of those posts where you're like, shouldn't I, what are you thinking? We run it past each other and we both have full, I don't know what the word is. Either one of us can say, no, you're not posting that to the other because we feel like maybe my emotions feel a certain way. And especially as women, we do this, emotionally, I feel like, the world needs to hear my opinion on this, but that could also be based on my hormone level that day or, something else happening. And so if you have somebody else who's like, yeah, that sounds a little harsh or that sounds a little, too emotional. I kind of like having somebody who's in check who's like, maybe you could just change it. Maybe you could take it down or absolutely do not post that. And then the next day you're like, wow, I'm really glad I didn't do that. So
that is
the
that's
thought.
a great thing to have, is to have that kind of accountability behind
Yes.
it, or like somebody kind of help keep you in check. It's like, hey, is this going to hurt my witness or is this okay?
Yes.
I think that's really good to have. And actually, a friend of mine posted earlier today, actually, about having like different content on social media and how we can change. What was it? It was like basically how we can change the way that we post instead of closing doors to open conversations. And especially with opinions that are like really black and white, or when people are posting like, this is absolutely how it is, this is my opinion, you can't tell me I'm wrong, kind of thing, but how that shuts people down so quickly. But where we can communicate in a way that's effective, that really opens the conversation and listens to both sides, rather than being like, this is exactly what I think, and you're just going to have to live with it, or people are arguing on it. And I just really like the way that it was like, how can we open the conversation? How can we communicate that way? And I think that's a big part of social media, is learning to communicate effectively, where we're not shutting people down with the way that we present ourselves.
That's true. I have one friend who's extremely politically outspoken. Um, and they go into it with the idea this is a conversation and they're okay with it. They don't care if everybody has different views and they can, keep the conversation going, for 100 posts down the line. I think we have to, if you have the personality that you can handle it, go for it. If you don't have the personality you can handle it and you're going to be like flipping out, maybe, don't allow comments or something. There are tools there that you can use. So I remember during the last election, I posted something and someone posted back, and it made me so angry what they posted back that I kind of like put a nasty comment on. And like an hour later, I went back and deleted it and private messaged them. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. That's not who I am. That's not how I want to handle myself on social media. Please forgive me. That wasn't godly. That was just anger. Please forgive me, make it right. And just kind of doing that also kind of helped save that relationship. So
And I think like that's exactly how we need to respond, because I mean, like we're not going to be perfect on social media,
Right.
and we are going to say things before we really think about it. And I've had to do that same thing before too, where it's like, oh, I need to remove that, and then I'd have to like I would private message the person and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have responded this way, and I've had those moments.
Remembering there's a person on the other end.
Exactly.
Yeah. So a lot of my friends feel that the best thing to do is just leave social media. And I have to admit that during first the election and then the pandemic, because I'm not medical, so I didn't like all that medical information coming in. It scared me. Um, but why did you? I was tempted to do that, but why did you choose to stay? And why do you encourage others to stay on social media?
Aside from it being my job,
Right.
like being connected 24/7 like this can be exhausting. And social media can kind of feel like you're just constantly assaulted with headlines and thoughts and everybody's opinions from like one extreme to the other. And even in the midst of that, I would still encourage others to stay and just change the narrative. Like it doesn't have to be a negative place. It doesn't have to be a place where people are going, back and forth and drawing lines and, taking sides. But, you can set up your space. You can be gracious. And, Dr. Jen Bennett, she's a friend of mine, and social media, I followed her for years, but she always said, be worth following. And that has been in the back of my head for years after her saying that. And that was pretty much like how I started like building the platform, whether it was mine for the ministry, anything else, is like what makes you be worth following. And in the midst of all this negativity and extremes in social media, it's like, how can you be that person? And so I think that's something I try to keep in the back of my mind, is make your space on there a safe place, a place that's going to encourage people, a place that people can go to find something that's encouraging, that is a fun story, that that they're not going to be hit by all these headlines or politics or anything else. Like you can represent Jesus on social media without running from, oh well, this is also negative, so is the church going to go like hide in a mountain or something because the world is crazy? I feel like that's kind of the same thing that we were doing with social media, when everyone's like, I just need to get off of here. And sometimes you do. I think sometimes it's healthy to step away, to reevaluate. Like you don't want to be hit with that all of the time, but it doesn't mean that you have to completely neglect it either, because you can still be a witness there, and there can still be some positive outcomes in it.
Mm-hmm. I kind of felt like when so many people were leaving, I felt like, but if we all leave, if the light leaves, it'll just be darkness. We
Yeah.
have to stay. So that's we made the same choice, that we were going to stay. And sometimes that means just putting up a funny post because it's too dark everywhere else. So when
Yeah.
we talk about representing Jesus well and being a light in a dark world, some people hear that and they think that they have to have it together all the time. They always have to be like super spiritual Christian, Wonder Woman. But that's not something I have really found in your posts. You are very real on your social media. You're very open about health issues you've gone through, about struggles you've gone through. But even as you do that, you're still representing Jesus well. What are some tips that you have for how can you be real and a witness?
I think this kind of comes back to like even Christians in their real worlds and then their virtual world. It kind of runs along the same lines, but many equate being a Christian to having your cushy little life, and that everything's like perfect, and then it's rainbows and butterflies all the time. And we try to represent Jesus in this way of, well, he came and made my life perfect, and so I have no problems. And it's just very, very unrealistic, because following Jesus is hard.
Yes.
It is. And, it's just so often we hide that part from the world. And it's like, I got my Jesus pill and now my life is like all perfect. And
Exactly.
that's like the way we try to present it. And that if you're struggling with something, then you're doing this Christianity thing all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's always been, it's been presented that way for so long, that that's kind of the image that we try to uphold. And I just don't really agree with that. God didn't wait for us to like get our act together before he sent Jesus to redeem a very broken world. And so with that, it's like we don't have to have this, plastic, everything's fine kind of life or portray it that way, because Jesus already came to us in our struggle and in our brokenness. So I mean, why should we paint it like everything's perfect, or like people have to be perfect in order to have that? Like God's redemptive work is, continuing in our lives. And so I think like being real about like where our struggles are and the things that we're going through, that just shows how great God is in our story. So we can show the struggles and we can be real about those things and show that it's okay to be in those hard places and to be struggling sometimes, because that's where God's like his power is made perfect in our weakness. And so I mean, I'm pretty much real about that, like with the health struggles and battling with like Lyme disease and everything else. I would go to bed at night and not know how functional I would be the next morning. And it's like, am I going to be able to even do the things on my to-do list or anything else? And I think that was actually really something, a process that I really had to grow through, because it was kind of going from, I'm doing all the things, I'm getting all the things done, I'm checking things off my little Christian list and I'm doing everything right, to I don't even know if I can do all the things anymore. I don't know if I'll finish this one thing, and just not having the energy or the like the mental ability to even get through a day sometimes, and not knowing if I would the next day. And so it kind of came to recognizing who God was in the midst of that. And I think that really was like a growing process for me, that hey, you know what, me not being able to check all the things off my list doesn't change who God is. Mm-hmm. And he's still stronger in those weakest areas of my life. And so, I mean, putting up like, oh yeah, I'm still doing all the things, everything's fine. Like, I feel like that almost, what's the word? I feel like that would be like doing a disservice to the grace that's in my life, because I do have those struggles, but it's God that takes me through all of them. And so we represent that everything's perfect, then it's like, but then why do you need God?
True. And because of the way you've done it, you can offer hope to people who are struggling, because there's more people struggling on social media than none of us have it together. We just like to think we do. But you can say, well, so how is she struggling then? And God's helping her, then he can help me. And that actually opens more doors for social media to be a form of ministry than just, a platform. So that's something I've always admired about you. Very, very real. And another area you've been very, real about is that you are a single woman. And yet I admire that you represent Jesus well as a Christian single woman. I told you when we were prepping for this, if I was leading a youth group, I would hold you up as an example for young girls to follow in the area of relationships. So how do you feel like you've done that on social media?
What's funny is that was actually how I got started in social media. Starting in high school, I had a blog that I actually called Single Seasons, and all of my writings early on were pretty much like how to grow into, a godly woman and different things like that. And while I think my writing has since, expanded beyond that, you can still see a lot of that like through it. But yeah, it kind of started in those roots, and still like who do I want to become, and how can I walk in that way. And it wasn't really focused on like, it's still focused on having good relationships and everything, but I was never really one to be like, I don't know, I guess pining is the word. That's just not necessarily my outlook. I think it's more, you follow God and you represent him well and become who he's created you to be. And that's just always kind of been the focus there.
Cool. And you do a great job representing that. So like I said, I got to know you on social media because you go to these big events and there's like hundreds of other people, and all you're really doing is, hey, how are you? You can't get more than a line off anywhere. At the end of the day, you're like, who did I even talk to? But On social media, you get to know people. And when I see you on social media, I see a young woman living with purpose. You have a lot going on. You seem to genuinely enjoy your life, and you're always actively working to advance the kingdom of God. Can you share some tips for how other women can live their lives with purpose?
Well, thank you. I do love to be active, and I believe that God just has a grace on my life right now to be able to be in those things, and this season to be involved in so many different areas. It's really a blessing to be able to do that. But living with purpose in whatever season, I think it's comes down to being intentional about where you're at. It's not always so like looking so far ahead, like, well, this is where I want to be, like this would be a better season, like I feel all winter when I'm waiting for summer.
Yes.
Yeah, so being intentional is definitely a big one. And then like serve for a cause that you care about. It always starts with serving and finding those opportunities to do that and get creative. Like think about the ways that you're gifted, and just the different ways that you can serve using that. Like maybe there's a gift of hospitality and you call your neighbors over. You might not know them, like get to know them. Or if you have, something in media, see, like the churches, especially now, we're always looking for somebody who can help with media, and whether it's online, whether it's like within the church itself, like find those areas that you're passionate about and then be intentional about serving in them.
Oh, that's great advice. So this is your soapbox moment. What would you like to share? Anything about representing Christ well on social media?
Sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes it's hard because you want to say the things and you shouldn't say the things. And thank God there's time to think about it before you actually say it. But just be real, be intentional, and have a purpose behind what you're posting. I think we do the same thing on social media that we do when we talk or have conversations sometimes. And they say most people like listen to respond instead of actually like listening to really like really taking in what and process what's being said before they respond to something. So somebody's talking, you're holding in your brain, oh, they talked about this. Okay, well, this is what I'm going to say to that. And they just keep going, not really processing the information and applying it before they say, oh, this is actually my thoughts on this, and taking into account what's being said. And we're so quick to respond with, well, this is what I think, that you're missing the whole point. You're missing a true dialogue and connecting with the person that you're trying to talk to if you're only like reacting and responding so quickly that you're not really taking in the information that they're giving you. And then kind of like what we touched on earlier, like if you mess something up, acknowledge it, maybe delete that comment and reach out to them personally. Like you have that option, which is good. And you can just be a light in your everyday life. And reach a community beyond your geography.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. I've heard so many good practical tips, but I think the thing that is standing out to me most is taking the time to listen, to process, and then to post. Not just like, boom, post, and then, oh my goodness, what I do, but listen, process, and then post. And it's been really awesome talking to you. I like following you on social media. I think you have a lot of fun and you have a lot to offer. So if you would like to connect with Brittany on social media, you can follow her at graced_with_glory on Instagram. On Facebook, she is brittany.l.ketter, or you can email her at brittany@pendlewomen.org. And every so often you do some blogging for them too. So if you follow the Pendle Women, you'll catch Brittany's blogs every once in a while. So connect with her, follow her. She is a great example of how to do social media well. I also want to take a moment and say thank you so much to everyone who watched or listened. If you like what you've heard today, we'd love if you took a second, share this podcast to your social media accounts. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Also, you can visit adessaholden.com to learn more about our books and resources, or follow me on the Adessa Holden Facebook page or channel, or subscribe, because we're going to have more of these videos coming out every month. But that's all that we have for today. It's been really awesome talking to you, Brittany. And I can tell you a couple times I thought, man, that's really good. That would preach. So have a great day, everybody. The God of the universe has a plan for your life. From the beginning of time, He's had a plan to advance His kingdom, and that plan includes a role for you. Today, He is calling your name and saying, do you want to play the part I have for you? Just like the original disciples who went from being fishermen from the small town in Galilee to being world changers, God has a plan for your life that is above and beyond anything you can imagine. He has a destiny He wants you to fulfill, a life that is so much richer and more meaningful than you could even dream. Now the choice rests with you. Do you want to walk in God's call for your life? Do you want to find God's perfect will, your destiny, the reason you were created, and the job He has for you? As you discover your calling, are you willing to do whatever it takes to walk in it? If you are ready to say yes, then it's time to read Whatever It Takes and learn how to live a life worthy of your calling. Get your copy today at Amazon or on adessaholden.com/whateverittakes.